everyone, to another Dolphin Communication Project deep dive. Today, we're looking at investigating killer whale behavior from multiple perspectives and locations. And as we were just discussing before we started, we think this is the first time we've had a deep dive with a trio of presenters. So you have a lot of expertise right there in that little video screen. We're thrilled to have Kathleen, Heather, and Manon all here. And as always, if you're watching live, we are recording. So please keep your videos off and you will find yourselves muted. That is on purpose. And so please use the Zoom chat there to submit your questions. You can submit them to everyone so that folks can kind of see what questions are coming up, or you can submit them just to DCP and we will get to those questions at the end. So with that, I will pass it over to our panel.
Thank you.
Oh, except it will help if I press the right button. My apologies.
Worries.
Now it is your turn.
And I think she very good for
Yeah, that looks great.
Awesome.
Well, fantastic. Good evening, everybody. I'm Heather, and this is Kathleen, and that is Manon, in case you didn't know. And it's our pleasure to share with y'all some of the research that we've been working on, actually recently with killer whales, and for, dare I say, several decades
Oh, yeah.
of dolphin, little dolphin research. So, so today we're going to share with you some of the work from the killer whale side of the house, primarily in San Diego, California. But we're going to go back and forth between little dolphins and big dolphins to just show y'all the comparisons of what we've been finding. So a few years ago, I was approached by SeaWorld to come in and start to evaluate the behavior of the largest population of killer whales in North America, in the United States, in San Diego. At the time, they had 9 killer whales, and we were able to start a study with them, studying them for over a year, using cameras positioned across all the pools that they have in that facility. And our first goal really was to sort of understand what behaviors did these animals engage in and how do they spend their day. So we originally were interested in doing 24-hour footage, but we quickly figured out that it's almost impossible to see the animals at night. So our research really dives between the daylight hours, so just before dawn and just after dusk, so that we can try to begin to see what happens. We did this across an entire year, initially with the goal of looking at potentially seasonal changes. And we were also looking at it every couple of months, which allowed us to evaluate 3 days at a time. And then we went from there with a sampling method, and we'll spend a little bit more time describing that shortly. Our other goal, in addition to understanding their information about how they spent their day, is who do they spend their day with and what are they doing when they're spending those days? Now, one of our primary considerations was that the behavior had to be outside of training sessions. So all the information that we were looking at for this study that we're going to share a little bit about really had to do with their spontaneous behaviors. Now we've been super excited to move into phase 2. Once we've started examining their social behavior, and that's a bit about what we're going to share with y'all tonight, is looking at what they do underwater. And that really has been quite amazing to be able to study those perspectives, which then has given us the opportunity to compare it with the data that DCP has been collecting through Kathleen's efforts, both in the wild and in human care. So we recently published a paper that looked at the activity budget of these particular animals, and we were very excited to get it out in behavioral processes towards the end of the year last year, the beginning of this year, and it really details what they're doing with their time across the day. Go ahead and click. Across the year and across within a day. So we really broke it down in terms of those every month, every 2 months within the day of our 12-hour day that we could observe. And then we looked at a variety of differences between males and females and a number of other things. What you see there on the graph right now is the overall budget of how the 9 whales that we were investigating at the time were spending their time across the board. And so as you can see, we had a handful of categories. These were broad categories given the fact that our perspective made it a little difficult to see what was going on in the water sometimes because we had surface video, and between glare and lighting and depth and all those sorts of things, it can sometimes be difficult to see what they're actually doing. So we had activities such as resting, swimming, pattern swimming, social behaviors, looking at different kinds of interest, attention to their environment. And as you can see, they do a lot of different things overall. You can also note that those skinny black lines on each of the bars is a representation of how variable the individuals are. So some of the behaviors are minimal variability and they all tend to kind of do it at about the same levels. And then other behaviors are much more variable, for example, social. So now we're going to jump into some specifics. Yep.
Okay, so for example, if the issue with the result we had is in the literature, you don't have much to compare our results with, but we tried anyway. And we found a paper from Noren and Hauser in 2016 that actually compares the activity budget based on the group, not on the individuals. It compares the activity budget of the northern and southern resident killer whale. And so here on the left side, you have our result that would we tried to match to the categories that are used in wild population. And as you can see, it actually matches. So social behavior were in the same level, resting were in the same level, and then rubbing was also in the same level.
And rubbing is rubbing on beaches. So
yeah, so rubbing on the side of the pool, for example. And then if we focus on social behavior particularly, and want to compare that to the different paper out there, and there's not much, with various definition of what social is based on the different study group, we see that in the wild it ranged from 1.8 to 15% of their time being social. It's hard to do a direct comparison just like this without saying small specificities related to our study. We looked at individual and we didn't look at the group, and all those wild studies looked at the group. So we are going to try to do our best to refine our numbers for social in phase 2. But if we look at social, the second paper we were working on was focusing on just the social part of the activity budget of the animals. And we wanted to see what was the group tendency in those social behavior, if there was any difference between female and male, and what was the individual variability. Was one of them doing more of one social behavior compared to the other? So we looked at 3 different types of behavior. Interactions, so 2 individuals interacting with one another, which means they're chasing each other, rubbing each other, they're going toward one another. Swimming duo is 2 individuals swimming together, and group swim is more than 2 individuals swimming together. So as you can see here, we saw a lot of duo swims compared to group swims, but also we are in a managed care environment. So our group, our 8 to 9 animals are divided in small social groups throughout the day. Those social groups can change also throughout the days. So you're likely to have more duos than group swim, because to have a group swim, you need to have more than 2 individual groups together, which is very often the case. That's why you have a lot of duos, but you don't have as much group of 5 as you have group of 3, for example. So that's why probably we see that difference here. And then looking at male and female for each of those social categories, we saw that we had more duo swim for males, not looking at who they're swimming with, just looking at all the males. We saw that they were doing more duos than the female, but then it's the opposite for the group swim. We saw female doing more group swims than the males. And we have an equal sex ratio. So we will look into details to who are in those groups and duo swims to see if it's more female together or mixed sex to better understand what's going on here. So small sex differences, but not big. And then if we look at individual variability for each of those categories, we have a lot of variability for interaction, and then just a bit of individual variability for duo swims and group swims. Now, phase 2 is looking at social behavior of killer whale from the underwater perspective. So before going into this, we wanted to see what was out there for killer whale. So we realized we know a lot about social structures, looking at the matrix lines of the resident killer whale, for example, but we're also getting to know more about social structure of other population in the Crozet Islands, in Norway, that are a bit more fish and fusion type than strictly matrilineal groups. We know a bit about their group behavior based on 4 behavioral categories, so social, resting, foraging, and traveling. We know just a bit less about their association pattern. So we know which group associate with who, but we don't know exactly if female associate more with female or male associate more with male, for example. And then if you narrow down the field all the way down to interaction, which means one-on-one interaction, physical interaction, for example, we don't know much because there's not much out there. And actually, we only find one paper recently that looked at interaction, meaning physical contact between 2 animals, and that was done from drone videos. They looked at the number of contact, who was associated with who, and they counted the synchronous breathing of those individuals to compare association network and interaction network. And this group of scientists realized that the association network is doesn't have any the age and sex doesn't have any effect on the association network, but the age and the sex of the individual have an effect on the interaction network, which means that if you look at a group, just the same group of killer whale, you will see them associate all together, and you won't see differences between male and female or between older individual and younger individual. But if you look at this group specifically, same group, and look at who is interacting with who, then there you'll see that maybe females are going to interact more with females and male more with males, or old individuals with more juveniles. So these kind of things. So based on this and all the information we gathered from the SeaWorld group, we wanted to try to do the same thing and look at association network and interaction network in our SeaWorld killer whale.
And that's what we did. And some of you, if you've joined one of the earlier webinars from DCP that Dr. Nicole gave, and she looked at association and interaction networks, and we were able to do that with Bimini, the dolphins there, to be able to look at if there was an overlap between associations and interactions, because this comes to the long-held assumption of studying dolphins in the wild, where you assume that because they associate, they interact. And she was able to show and prove that assumption that yes, if they associate, they interact. And using a similar analysis, or the same analysis, I believe, we were able to show that the association networks, which were based on proximity data and social events between individuals, we were able to show that the association network matches the interaction network between individuals. So we have the proximity in terms of the distance or the space between individuals within one adult killer whale body length. Mm-hmm. is the association in this group. And then we also looked at social events. So social interaction between individuals. Were they swimming together? Were they interacting together? Were they associating with one, not associating, but interacting socially with one another? And you can see from these diagrams here that they match up pretty well. The thickness of the diagram between nodes shows the strength of either association or interaction between pairs. And each of the circles or the nodes relate to the particular individuals in that group. So you can see they match pretty well, which was really exciting to see. So what we didn't know yet was the full story and how this happens with social behavior. So we were able to look at the associations in this group. We were able to look at interactions with this group, but we haven't actually been able to compare this to the wild, what's going on. And we wanted to see more detail about how the killer whales were sharing the interactions and sharing the behaviors with one another. And for that, we needed to really look at the nitty-gritty of inter-individual exchanges and social behavior. And while we don't yet have all of the details for killer whale social behavior, we do have a lot of this information on just the smaller dolphins. Looking at, as those of you who follow along with DCP, we have a lot of information on bottlenose dolphins, on Atlantic spotted dolphins, on Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins, a little bit on dusky dolphins and a couple of other species. But you have, if anyone's interested in these papers, they're on the DCP website. But we have spent decades, as Heather nicely indicated, studying the social interactions of these animals and looking at animal to animal interactions and observing them underwater and watching habituated groups with clear water so we could see how these animals share behaviors. And we've seen a lot. And preliminarily, slight spoiler alert, we're seeing that small dolphins and large dolphins behave with each other the same way, which is really exciting stuff. So to give you just a preamble on some of those social behaviors, there's pec fin contact, which we've studied for probably almost 2 decades, looking at how dolphins share contact with their pectoral fins to either pec fin or pectoral fin to body. This is used to develop, strengthen, and maintain social relationships, especially with young males, but also when females are older, they'll use that information, they'll share pec fin contacts with one another of same reproductive status is what that suggests. Pec fin contact has been shown in our group, but also in several other studies to be used to repair bonds after they've had a conflict. So individuals that might have a fight, they'll come together and have a pec fin contact. And also moms might use this behavior to discipline their offspring, to discipline their calves. We've also seen different social behaviors. There's maternal and alloparental care in bottlenose dolphins that we've seen and in spotted dolphins. Various pair swimming positions are used to show that, as well as to maybe strengthen and maintain relationships. It may be used in post-conflict resolution or to reduce tension between individuals who might have had some sort of a tiff between individuals. And these behaviors are all really interesting because for what we've seen is that it doesn't only show the relationship between individuals and for them to each strengthen it with each other or to share behaviors, but it also allows others in the group to see that these two individuals are tight. So think about people walking down the street and they might be holding hands. You know that they're together, they're a pair. It's the same type of thing. If you have 2 dolphins sharing pec fin contact, you know that they're tight, that they're moving on. So there's more we can learn, but we've seen a lot of this stuff with the pair swimming positions and with some of their synchronous behavior. Added to that, sorry, we've looked at socio-sexual behaviors between individuals, as you can see in these videos. I don't know, Kel, if we'll have to put a little rating on this because you see young individuals socializing with each other. But we've seen a variety of different socio-sexual behaviors among the smaller dolphins in all the groups that we've studied. And we've also seen this in some of the killer whales, but now we're looking at it in greater detail.
So what we wanted to do with killer whale is get to know if they were using the same behavior among themselves. So the first question is, what social behavior do we see with the seawall killer whale? And then the two other question were, how do they use those social behavior, and are they similar to the other dolphin species? So to do that, we, since it's just the beginning of the phase 2, looking at the underwater video, we only pulled out, look at few footages from the data we've received. So for this, we used 4 videos and videos for which we had a large group of animals, so we would be more likely to see them interact. So if you see down the picture at the bottom, show the surface view, and the red on those surface view is the coverage of the underwater video, and you have a small sample of those underwater video for each pool there. So first question, what kind of social behavior did we see? We saw pair swimming position among many kinds of individuals, male together, female together, female male together, and we saw also a lot of group swim, so between 3 and all 5 individuals swimming together. We saw a lot of body-to-body contact, and also a lot of pectoral fin contact, and a lot of rubbing with those giant pectoral fin. So basically using those enormous flippers to rub them each other's from the head to the tip of the tail, all the way over the body. And then we saw also various socio-sexual behavior among female, among male, and among mixed sex individual. So you have a couple of examples there with some genital rubbing or some mounting between actually 2 males. And then we had some social play. What we could determine would have been social play, because it's always hard to determine play, even more social play between individuals. But because they were sort of all chasing each other during a group swim, using a lot of rubbing, not fully biting on each other, not fully hitting each other, but just pushing against each other, we defined those interactions as social play. And we saw the same thing in dolphins. And then another behavior that we weren't expecting on those just first review of the first videos was beak to genital. And we've seen that with one of the adult female doing this behavior to an adult male. So you can see her putting her rostrum here just at the genital slit of the male, and they keep swimming like this. So we saw a lot of social behavior among this group. And then the next question was, how do they use them? So instead of looking at each of those bits of behavior, we choose to focus on duo swim, including the pair swimming, group swim, and then contact, all kind of contact, body to body, pectoral fin, every single time we could confirm a contact. And we looked at all of those based on the time we could see individual on screen. So in total, for the video we looked at only one video, because it takes time to record interaction and social behavior. So we only looked at one video from 12:20 to 2 p.m. And in total, we had animals in view for 56 minutes approximately. So during those 56 minutes, for 15 minutes, we had a single killer whale in view. And for about 41 minutes, we had at least 2 animals in view. So which means during 15 minutes, we couldn't see any social behavior, because you need 2 individuals at least to interact. And for 41 minutes, we could observe social behavior. So what did we see there is a lot of social behavior. Almost all the time they were in view, they were social. So it means the social rate for just that bit of video was almost 1, which means every single time we see them on camera, they are interacting. But then what are they doing exactly? Well, a lot of contact and a lot of swim together. We counted 92 contacts, and that's just an underestimation, because, as I said, they were rubbing each other for a very long time from head to tail, which sometimes took 14 seconds from head to tail to rub one another. So instead of counting 1 contact for this kind of event, we counted 1 contact per second. We could have chosen a slightly different counting system, but we went for this one to be a bit more restrictive. So it's a lot of contact. And then social swims, we had 50% of the duos that were defined and known per swimming position, and mostly infant and parallel. And then half of the time they were swimming all together. It was group swims with many kind of group compositions. And then, are these behaviors similar to the other dolphin species we've studied? Well, based on what we said before, you can guess the answer.
So as you guys can see in this series of videos that are showing, we have the killer whales on the top that is sped up. And then we had our dolphins down in Mikura, and then the dolphins down in Bimini. And as you can see in these particular videos, a lot of contact is happening no matter what species you're working with. So yes, contact is happening across all of these dolphinids. And then as we move forward and looking at the kinds of group swimming and pair swimming that are displayed now with our managed care group at RIMS in Honduras and the wild dolphins down in Bimini, along with our killer whales in San Diego with SeaWorld, we have quite a bit of pair swimming, as we saw already, as well as those group swims. And as we move forward into the OSO, maybe not R-rated, but certainly PG-rated types of interactions, the socio-sexual behavior that we know is particularly important between males as they are building bonds and practicing and mentoring, as some of our work has been showing, but also important in terms of trying to get into that mating and sexual behavior in terms of those practices. So we're seeing it across all the groups that we've been observing, as you might expect in a conserved behavior like that. And then, as were pointed out with the images, and so these are kind of the cool things, the social play, which obviously is always a representation of a stress-free, loving environment where they have lots of opportunities to interact with each other and engage in activities that represent that they're having a great time and they're in a relaxed to be able to do those things. And then this really neat behavior of the beak to genital behavior that we've now seen in multiple species of dolphins. What its function appears to be is still in question, but we definitely have some really interesting research that's coming about suggesting that there is identification information found within urine of the animals, and they can link that to the signature whistles within bottlenose dolphins specifically that Jason Bruck has been looking at recently. But we'll be curious to see if this is something that is carried through the other dolphinid species as we have opportunities to do that. So super amazing and lots of fun to be able to look at all of these sorts of behaviors that are shared across multiple species of dolphins, big and small.
So basically, from what we saw from the first part of the study, phase 1, is these animals behave with a variety, they use a variety of behavior, social or solo behavior, great variability here for the whole group, but also for each individual. And they use variety of social behavior. And each individual interacted with everybody else in the group when other animals were available to them. And socializing happens regularly. So depending on, you can look at them in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. You will have some socializing event among group members any time of the day. And then, as we said, the social behavior observed for this group of killer in managed care matched other species of dolphin, but also other species of dolphin in different setting. So in managed care and in the wild. And that's where we're going next.
Yeah, our next step, and we have to thank Grand Vista and the Japan Underwater Film Company for sharing this footage with us. Because the exciting thing about what we're doing is with the small dolphins, we started with dolphins in the wild, studying them, and then shifted also to include studying them in managed care. And we've done the reverse with the killer whales, where we've studied them in managed care. We've looked at both the animals in SeaWorld San Diego, and we're studying the killer whales at Loro Parque in Tenerife. Can you play that again?
Canary Islands.
Canary Islands, thank you. And we also now have footage from animals in the wild. We have footage from animals in Japan, from drone footage and underwater footage. We have footage from Norway of killer whales up there from Debbie Boma and Johnny Van Vliet from Wild Encounters. And also Christophe Guinet and his team from the Crozet Islands have shared footage that they have collected over the years, over 50 years of study, to look at the comparisons that we can see of these animals in multiple settings, whether it's in the wild or managed care, but both from above, from the aerial view, and from underwater. And we are seeing a lot of conserved behavior, a lot of similarity across groups, which is very exciting as we pull all this together. So I think we've covered at least the cliff notes of what we wanted to do to share as we move forward with this study and this project. And the exciting thing is that we have studied small dolphins and large dolphins. We're going to continue to do so. And we can't forget the belugas.
Don't forget the real whales. We have real whales, the big white whales.
But what's exciting is that they share behaviors the same way. It doesn't seem to matter where they are. If you have inter-individual animals and you have choice and control in their environment, you're going to see the same types of behaviors, which looking at it in detail gives us some insight into their social lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. We normally do our DCP concluding slides first and then get to questions. But we had one question that was specific about the summary slide that had 3 bullets on it. So I wondered if maybe you could pull that back up and I could ask the question. So someone is asking for a little more clarification on the 3rd bullet point and what the word conservation means in that sentence.
For conservation, we mean that the behaviors are used the same across all of the dolphins that we've seen. So when we look at the different dolphin species in the wild, we look at the different dolphin species in managed care, the different groups that we've studied, they use pectoral fin contact the same way. So how they initiate, how they use it, where they contact one another, they use contact behavior the same way. So far as what we've seen, pair swim positions seem to be used the same way among individuals. And this is supported also by the literature where folks who've studied dolphins, for example, in Monkey Maya, Shark Bay, Australia, or in Sarasota, or in some of the other areas, have found the same types of behaviors used the same way that we've looked at them.
And I think to add a little bit to that, there's a question of, do you see the same behaviors, period? And then there's the second question of, are they used functionally in the similar way, dependent upon the setting that you're in? And what we're showing so far, at least with the killer whales, is that yes, the behaviors are the same, whether we're in managed care or in the wild. But the next question is, are they using them functionally the same way? That's the part that we're working on next. And that's really where that underwater footage matters in terms of getting that perspective to see what's going on with it.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're just going to run with some questions now. Can you explain a bit more about what you mean by pair swimming? Is that just any pair of dolphins that is swimming closely to each other?
So pair swimming, the way we define it here at DCP, is 2 individuals swimming together in the same direction and within the body lengths of one another. So if I can play that, this is an example of the echelon pair swimming, with the mom here that is sort of on the left and below her cow that is on upright of her dorsal fin. So that would be one type of persuming. And working on the dolphin at RIMS, looking at the way they use those persum, we managed to identify 6 persuming position. So the infant position that we see a lot in documentaries and pictures of dolphins with mom on top and baby just below around the genitals area. The echelon that I just saw, and then I think we're gonna get
Yep, we have some time. So
then you have the
you
parallel,
can see it.
2 dolphins perfectly aligned with one another on the same level, the staggered parallel with one of them leading either on the right or on the left, and then the uneven, which is a staggered parallel with one of them above or below the other, and finally the stacked position, which is basically 2 dolphins on top of each other, that we apparently see most only among male. So all the different persuming are observed in all different type of dyads, male, female, 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 male, male, and all different age, older individuals with younger individual. But they are not only observed between the mother and calves, they're also observed outside of those dyad. We're still working on it, and there might be a paper coming out soon.
Well,
Mhm.
I have to add, the exciting thing is looking at the pair swim position. We, over the last couple of years in RIMS, we have thought and looked at male interactions, and we definitely think that there's mentoring going on by older males to younger males. And Manon thinks that maybe we can use pair swimming to give an indication to that mentoring. So every bit of results that we get leads to a new question or leads to a refinement of a question, which is pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Have you considered or will you consider an acoustic approach versus a visual approach for these behavioral studies?
Well,
So
yes,
killer whale, it's easy.
The answer is yes. That obviously has been part of DCP's approach for all of the work that they've done with the smaller delphinids. Unfortunately, we're not swimming with the killer whales with the same NVA experience, which would mean adding hydrophones into the pools to be able to evaluate that component. And then there's a whole lot of logistics that go with it, along with needing a larger team to be able to process all of those data. But absolutely, that's another element that is always needed in these studies.
And that is something that Lotto Park is working with another collaborator to look at the acoustic behavior of the animals there. And so we'll be collaborating with them down the road in terms of matching some of the behaviors that we'll be documenting with potentially some of the acoustics that they have. So short answer is yes. Wait a year or two for the longer answer.
Keep everyone on the hook. Mhm.
Yes.
The next question is, with the variable of ecotypes in killer whales with different hunting and communication strategies, do you anticipate seeing more variety in social behaviors of wild whales across different ecotypes compared to whales in human care?
Well, that's going to be something hard to do. If I think about type D, type C, all the subantarctic killer whale that we almost don't have on camera, and we need good drone views and good underwater. So looking at this is going to be a challenge, but if you think about it, looking at how we see similar behavior across all dolphin species, and just on this small footage from Japan, we might actually see more similarities across ecotypes than differences. They live in different environments with different social structure, so we might expect the proportion of each social behavior to change, but they will probably use the same behavior, just maybe not in the same proportion, or maybe not in the same context, or with different type of individuals.
But sorry.
Well, I was just going to jump in and say I think with today's technology and the time that's being spent with other ecotypes and other killer whale populations, we're learning a lot more about those populations. And in fact, the first 50 to 60 years of the research of killer whales really focused on those animals in the Pacific Northwest. And it may seem that those animals, the resident animals, might be more of an anomaly or on the edge than the rest of the killer whale populations around the world. So I'd be curious to see what continues to happen as we begin to open up more opportunities to view the animals from drone footage and from underwater footage. So I think, again, to, sort of reiterate what Manon said about the idea that the behaviors will be the same as we've already shown, but the proportion or the frequency with which they use them might vary based on what their populations are about. But it seems like they're generally more fission fusion potentially than we originally thought.
And added to that, in some of the other areas, if you base the definition of ecotype specifically on what they forage on, that it's gonna muddy the waters, because there are some animals in other areas that sometimes eat mammals and sometimes eat fish, and it depends on what's available. So it's more opportunistic. So and that's being very broad in that. Happy to share the papers we're reading and learning about, but it's pretty, the more we learn about the animals in different areas, the more it looks like they are big black and white dolphins and follow the same patterns as other dolphins. I don't mean to be sacrilegious there with, the killer whale as the mighty dolphin, but.
Thank you. And I think and if anyone has any other questions, feel free to pop them in. Otherwise, at the moment, the last question is about rubbing behavior that you said you looked at or are looking at. Are you just looking at killer whale to killer whale, or are you also looking at self-rubbing if they're rubbing on an object or their environment?
Both.
Both. We're looking at both. If you look at documentaries on killer whale, you might have seen these animal rubbing on pebble beaches on the rocks, on the very round rocks there. We don't know exactly how often they do it. We don't know if they use other things. We know in the Crozet Island they use kelp also to rub on. I've seen videos of killer whale rubbing on marine buoys or boats. So they are rubbing on the environment. For the wild, it's going to be a challenge to see if they are more self-rubbing, so against the environment, or other killer whale rubbing, using other animals to rub each other. But we'll be able to look at it in managed care with the different groups that we are studying. So we'll keep you informed. But basically, the SeaWorld killer whale also use a lot of environmental rubbing against the walls, against the bottom of the pools, the grids, everything they can put their body on. They will use it to rub each other.
Yeah.
And that was in the original paper, rubbing within the environment, because the rubbing with each other was difficult to see with the surface camera. So we withheld the comparison between rubbing between individuals versus rubbing the environment until we had the underwater perspective. So that will be coming out in the next paper or two.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that, I think, prompted another question. So maybe this is the last question. We'll see. Out of curiosity, have you seen any melon bumping behavior? That is melon to melon. This listener used to observe that in Orlando.
No. I've seen two killer whales softly rubbing their heads against each other, sort of pushing each other's with the head, but that was on the side of the head and not the melon specifically. I haven't seen anything related to the face or the melon specifically in those animals. So no.
But you have seen the cross swimming, which
Yes.
is, coming at one another and swimming completely over each other's bodies, which has been documented in the wild as well.
And there is evidence of sort of a mouth to mouth, a tongue to tongue interaction that has been observed in multiple killer whale populations. There was an image of a killer whale doing a tongue to tongue action with another killer whale in a book that we use heavily for some of the beluga work that we've been doing. And I believe it was also recently observed at Little Park.
And in Norway.
And in
Um,
Norway, there's a paper out about it from the wild animals as well, finally documented.
Right. So there's some interesting behaviors. It's curious to see where it derives from. We know that they do a lot of head-to-head interactions in the smaller dolphins. They do a lot of head-to-head interactions with the belugas. I'm certain, part of that probably depends on social composition, who's available, who's around, and that would be some stuff that we would need more to look at.
More.
Or
Um,
a lot of videos. Yes.
And another question. Outside of training sessions, was human attending behavior included in your overall activity budgets, like following trainers around or interacting with people at windows?
Yes,
Most
absolutely.
definitely.
And you can see, I'm gonna let Minot look because her eyes are better than mine. To show you
there
what
it is.
that
It's the light blue here.
that turquoise right there in the center. So they're spending approximately, what is that, 20%,
It's
15%, 10%? Trying to remember our numbers there. About 10% of their time doing that attention to trainers around the pool, and Minot was very, very good at detecting that. So she had to look at multiple camera angles and multiple ins and outs to decide, were they looking at a person, or were they looking at a bird, or were they looking at some other random thing in the environment. So about 10% of their time is being spent doing that.
Which is good because it means they want to interact with their trainers.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, thank you. I'm going to steal the share now, and just wrap up our concluding slides. So we always remind people that this will be recorded. So if you caught it live, you're listening live, and you want to rewatch it, it will be posted by the end of the week. And if you're watching the recording, thank you for finding it. I'm glad you did. If you go to the DCP website under the Knowledge Hub, you'll find the webinars there. It's also on our YouTube channel and on our Vimeo page. This was a deep dive, so technical, a little bit longer, but of course, everyone is welcome. We also have dolphin lessons. They're shorter, they're geared towards a younger audience, but I think they're lovely, even for adults to listen to. And of course, we have our podcast, The Dolphin Pod. We just released a new episode last week, and we already have another one that will be coming out later this month, so stay tuned. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone that DCP is a nonprofit. So if you would like to support our research and education efforts, please do. You can become a dolphin protector, which gets you a cool kit and certificate and information. You can become a member, make donations. You can join Kathleen in the field. You can buy DCP merch, and you can just follow along, share our information, spread it out there. Our goal is that more people have access to accurate scientific information about dolphins, and we hope that that inspires not only dolphin conservation, but their entire ocean home. There you can see DCP's contact information, our website, email, social media, and we hope that you all stay in touch. And with that, I'll say goodnight to everyone, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.